I know when you got started, you had to apologize for the McConnell donation, and you've already changed over some campaign staff. Do you think things got off to a rocky start, or what do you think happened?
Oh, I think things have been going great, actually. Nice to see you. Nice to be here. No, I'm really excited. We've had a great last few months, and I think the team is in a really good place. Change is natural, and certainly I feel like there's a high level of excitement coming my way.
It's a crowded field.
Yes.
Well, first of all, why did you want to get in? Why do you think you'd make a good governor? Why do you want to be governor?
Yeah. So I was born and raised here. I love this state. I spent my whole life really growing up here and 25 years at CVS. And I looked at what was happening in the state really after COVID, in the middle of COVID, and said, people are going backwards, especially women, people of color, and the economy was stalling out. And I thought I could really be the person who helps jumpstart the state. I know how to do it. I've led giant organizations. I know how to execute. And I really think I could make a big difference for all Rhode Islanders.
As I said, it's a crowded field.
Yeah.
In a Democratic primary, I guess any primary, the voters who turn out usually tend to be more on the extremes. And the Democratic Party especially seems to be going more progressive. And there's some candidates who seem to be more on your left. You've got Governor McKee, who seems to be more in the middle and likes to work with small businesses. Where do you see yourself fitting into that? Especially you come from a corporate background, Lincoln School, Harvard MBA, CVS, Goldman Sachs. Do you think you have the progressive credentials to fit in there?
You know, I think one of the nice things about me is I'm not a politician, so I'm going to let all the political pundits figure out the dynamics of the race. But I think that when Rhode Islanders get to know me, they will know that I'm unique in the race because I'm not a politician. I've never run for office. I've never held office. And I think what I bring is an ability to make things happen for Rhode Islanders. It's what you have to do in business. And I'm talking to a lot of people around the state, and I feel like there's a lot of energy for this. So wherever they are on the spectrum, I think people care about three things that I care passionately about. First is education, second is affordability, and the third is making sure our economy is humming, that we've got more businesses so people have career opportunity. That's what we all want for our kids, our spouses, ourselves. So I think that's a fairly unifying idea, and I think it will come from all parts of the Democratic Party and independents who look at me. But I think people are tired of party labels and the party situation. What they're saying is there someone out there who's really going to fight for me, who won't be beholden to anyone, who's going to be coming after everything that I need to build a better life and have a better life in Rhode Island? That's what I care about.
I hear what you're saying. In 2022 now, there are parts of the Democratic Party that are pretty progressive and pretty liberal, and a corporate background and a big company like CVS, even though it's local, having that as the big thing on your resume may not help. I know they have the opioid settlement. What do you say about your background and people, again, who are leaning left who don't think that helps in today's day and age, and they don't want that?
Yeah, no, I think it's really easy to make quick judgments like that, but I'll give you a really good example. I was very successful in my career, but I started right out of school in a very mid-level job at CVS. I came in, I had almost every job you could have, over 25 years in the business. I moved over, I took my hits, I had all different kinds of jobs, and I ended up becoming the head of the retail business. I had 200,000 people working for me. But along the way, I had 4 kids in 4.5 years. I got cancer when my youngest was just 1 year old. And so I realized during all that how grateful I was to have paid time off, to have really good health care. And these are the kinds of things that I think people look at in my background and they say, maybe she's someone who could help make that happen for me too. So I think that when people really get to know me, they're going to see I'm a person who's fighting hard for all Rhode Islanders, because I would love everyone in this state to have the kind of support and opportunity that I did.
What is broken in Rhode Island and how will you fix it?
Well, I think that, one of the things about Rhode Island is we're also lucky. It's physically in a beautiful state. I think especially in COVID when, more people are looking around the country, they're not beholden to these big cities. We've certainly had a lot of people from out of state come and put up their houses and their shops here. But I think for too long we have settled for mediocrity in this state. And I think that I'd like to raise the bar. I'd like to raise the bar for all Rhode Islanders. So I look at education as a great example of that. Our public schools are not serving our kids. I saw that when I was an executive at CVS because I hired thousands of people to come work in Rhode Island. And as I was recruiting young families in, one of the things I often saw is they ended up living in Massachusetts for the good public schools, and they could drive 20 minutes and come to Woonsocket and work and go back home at night. So I think there's a huge opportunity for us to raise the bar in our education system, which will not only be great for those kids and their parents, but also be great for the business community. And I think that in good states where education's working, and Massachusetts is a great example of this, business and education are working together to make education really hum for those kids.
On the COVID front, you've been critical of the governor and his response, or I think what you would say is a lack thereof. Go ahead and have at it. What do you think should have been done differently? What would you have done differently under the circumstances?
Well, I want to start by saying I was rooting for the governor, and I was rooting for all of Rhode Island to come out of this as quickly as possible. I think the worst thing that you can do is not look around the corner and plan ahead. That's what I learned to do in my business career. So I think in November, what I am critical of is we saw the numbers rising and we saw the governor not take action then. And I think that was the missed opportunity in all of this. Not that we would have stopped Omicron. It's been devastating for families and businesses and kids in schools. But I think when you start to see the data rising, you need to take action sooner. So that's what I'm really critical of.
What would that action have been?
Yeah, I would have set up more testing sites across the state. Testing is in a terrible position. I would have mandated that all state employees have vaccinations. And I would have made sure that we were supporting our hospitals in a much more intense way. I think other states called in their own National Guards much sooner than we did. And we heard from the health system that they were cracking and they needed more support.
Vaccination mandates are obviously very controversial. The governor did it with healthcare workers. Mm-hmm. The president's attempt to do it for big businesses got blocked by the Supreme Court. So you say you would do it for state workers. What do you say to the people who obviously aren't for that and say it's my body, my choice? I work some desk job for the state. I don't need to be vaccinated.
I think if you look at what Rhode Island has done in the last 20 months, I'm very proud of Rhode Islanders. I think close to 85% of all Rhode Islanders are fully vaccinated, and we're leading in the country. So I want to start by saying that because I think Rhode Islanders really accept the notion that vaccinations are the best way we can keep ourselves healthy and keep ourselves out of the hospital. So I think for the remaining folks who have not yet been vaccinated, I understand it can be scary, but I think that when they hear from their family members and other people the importance of it, and I do think mandates help. We've seen that from the data, is when we have mandates in place, people might be scared, but they do it. And I think ultimately when more people are vaccinated, it's a protection for all of us. So it's not just an individual decision, it's a decision about how do I keep everyone in this state, across the country and across the globe, as healthy as we can be.
Would you want to mandate the vaccine for school kids?
I would follow whatever the advice is of the CDC, and I'm encouraged by the fact that the age is going down in terms of vaccinations, and so whatever the CDC says would be allowed, I would definitely follow. I've got sisters with young kids, and I know they were so excited when their kids, 11-year-olds, could finally get vaccinated because that made a big difference for their families.
I know you've called for an audit of how the federal COVID money is being spent. Do you have concerns about how it's being spent, or do you just think there needs to be more oversight?
I'm generally concerned that with all the money coming into the state, we do not have the infrastructure to make sure that we're spending it well. And I think this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. We've never seen this much money coming in, and I want to make sure that all Rhode Islanders can feel really confident that we're getting a great return on that investment. So it will be billions of dollars at the end of the day. And I think Rhode Islanders deserve to know where we're spending it. Is it being spent wisely? What's happening after the fact, after a business or a nonprofit gets the money? Are we getting better outcomes as a result of that. So that's the sort of structure I was very used to leading at CVS. That's part of business accountability, I think. And so I would be looking to set up a team and a structure to make sure that all of that money is accounted for and people can feel confident and proud that at the end of the day, when I think about the opportunity, we've got the next decade for us is going to be a real moment for us to say, are we putting the state on the right step forward? And this is an area where I really feel like I could make a big difference for Rhode Islanders.
Kathy Gregg just reported the other day that there are some staffers who are now working for you who used to work for Governor Raimondo who benefited from some of that money when they were in the private sector in between.
Yep.
What do you say in response to that you're saying we need to look at where this money is and there may be a perception that people in the know and with connections got some of that money?
Yeah. Well,
that worked for you.
Right. So obviously this happened well before I was working with these individuals. I think everything they did was above board, but no one would be off the table in terms of my audit, whether they worked in the Raimondo administration, the McKee administration, or working on my team. I would want a full audit of all of that.
I think I've seen, and I don't know how many people it's come from, that there are the comparisons between you and former Governor Raimondo coming from a business background. Obviously, you said you've never held elective office, so she was the treasurer. But again, touting that business background, obviously you have some former Raimondo staff. Would you want to be compared to her or not? Because obviously she had her critics like any politician or governor did. What do you think about that comparison? And do you think it's just because you're a woman who comes from a business background that people are saying that?
Well, look, I'm always honored to be compared to a very strong, successful woman, so I don't have a problem with it. But I really think at the end of the day, it's more important to focus on what am I going to bring to Rhode Islanders? What is my life experience that helps them be successful? I think this comparison is not so helpful for Rhode Islanders. So I'm flattered by it at some level, but I'm much more focused on what's the difference that I can make for all Rhode Islanders.
I know it's kind of stalled. They're going somewhere in the General Assembly is legalizing recreational marijuana. Again, you come from a pharmaceutical company.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? And how would you go about it if you're for it?
This is something that I know they're working on right now. I support it, and I would follow the lead of the folks who are doing that right now. It's not a deep area of expertise for me, but I support it.
So you're for it, and you don't really care about you don't have a preference on the regulation part of it, or
it's just not an area I've gotten deep in yet. So I'd need to understand that more.
Okay. How about driver's licenses for undocumented immigrants?
I am a supporter of that. I think that we are one of only 19 states in the country that does not allow undocumented workers to get a driver's license. And I know some people have concerns about it because they think this is a fairness issue. I think this is a economic social justice issue. And if we've already got these people here in the state, they're paying taxes, let's make sure that they can get to work on time. And so I really would be supportive of that.
And also you've talked about voting rights. Do you think it's too hard to vote in Rhode Island? I know obviously some people on the right think things are too easy to vote in most parts of the country. You need to show ID, but
I think
Rhode Island's laws are too strict.
I think Rhode Island should be much easier to vote than it is. And I have said that I'm surprised in a state that had all Democratic leaders. Last year, we were the only state that didn't make progress in voting rights. And this is something I care deeply about. I was born in 1964, so this was a year before the Voting Rights Act. And, it's hard to imagine that we live in a time, I grew up in a time where people were prevented from voting because they didn't have the right education or enough money to pay a tax. So I think this is a really important issue, and I think that some of the ideas I put out are very common sense ideas. So I'll give you 3 examples. One of them is to send automatic ballots to people's homes. We did that in the middle of COVID. It worked really well. Why not keep that alive so it makes it easier for people to have a ballot? Second idea is making sure that polling places are open on the weekends. Tuesdays are really hard days to vote. When I was building my career and raising my kids, it was very hard to get out and vote on a Tuesday. It's hard for working families. Let's make it work for them on the weekends. And then the third idea is same-day registration. So I think if we did those ideas plus others I've laid out, we could be a leader in this country, and I would very much like us to be a leader. I think this is a moment where not much is happening, obviously, at the federal level, so states have to step up, and that's why I think I could make a big difference.
And just finally, what do you think about the tax rates in Rhode Island? You talked about improving education. Do you think there needs to be a better funding formula? Where does that come from? And in general, again, coming from a business background, do you think Rhode Island needs to lower certain tax rates to be more business friendly? You often hear that. Or do you think taxes need to be raised to pay for more programs?
I'm still looking at all the areas and making sure that I come back to people with a more concrete plan. But in general, I think that Rhode Island needs to be even more competitive when we think about attracting new businesses to come here. And so I'm not in favor of raising taxes. I don't think this is a moment we need to raise more taxes, especially with all the money coming in. And in general, I would want to make sure that competitively, as we look at ourselves versus the rest of New England for sure, but other states, we can do as much as possible to make sure that we've got a thriving economy. Also, taxes are a big burden on lots of people in this state. So this is an issue where I want to understand if there are ways to remove the burden for everyday Rhode Islanders. And I don't have specific ideas on that yet. But in general, I think it's fair to say I'm not a big fan of raising taxes, particularly in this moment.
Anything else you'd like to add?
No, I just want to say that it's really a pleasure to be here. I was born and raised in this state. I love it. You and I were talking offline. You know, my grandmother was raised in Westerly. My great-grandparents came here from Italy. And I worked my way up at CVS, and I think I could really do the job for Rhode Islanders in many ways because I haven't grown up in politics. I see the problems, and I know how I could make a big difference, and it would be a great honor for me.